Is it possible to be too good to get into a medical school? Can all those hours of late night studying just to keep your GPA up and get a high score on the MCAT actually end up backfiring? Should you only apply to top-tier medical schools if your application profile is exceptionally strong? In this video, we're going to discuss yield protection, an unofficial and somewhat mysterious practice in medical school admissions that many applicants fear could put them at a disadvantage. We'll answer questions like, is yield protection even real? What is a low yield or high yield medical school? Should you be worried about yield protection? And what can you do to avoid yield protection? But before we get started, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can be the first to see our new resources with all the latest updates and guidance on med school admissions. Medical schools receive hundreds, even thousands of applications each cycle. Most applicants send out tens of applications in hopes of receiving an interview invite from a fraction of them, and an acceptance letter from at least one of them. Basic probability would suggest that the more applications you send out, the greater your chances are of interviews and acceptances, especially if you're applying mostly to schools where your GPA and MCAT are in line with or higher than the average stats of recently accepted students. But yield protection complicates that line of reasoning. Yield protection, in theory, is a practice where medical school admissions committees will reject an applicant based on the assumption that they're likely to be accepted at more highly ranked schools and therefore unlikely to attend a school they're overqualified to attend. The idea is that med schools want their yield, meaning the percentage of accepted applicants who actually matriculate into the incoming class of first-year students, to remain as high as possible because it helps them maintain their image and reputation as a highly sought-after institution. To illustrate this, let's consider a hypothetical situation in which all of the applicants accepted into the program, ranked number 50, were also accepted into Harvard Medical School. It's probably safe to say that every single one of those applicants would opt for HMS over the number 50 school, leaving the AdCom scrambling at the last minute to send out another batch of acceptances or interview invites in a last-ditch effort to fill up their incoming class. On one hand, it's a matter of practicality and efficiency for the lower-ranked schools. Why waste time reviewing an applicant's profile, poring over their essays, scheduling and conducting interviews with them, and then narrowing down the list of accepted students, only to find that the applicant accepted an offer of admission at a more prestigious school? This would not only be a huge inconvenience for the medical school and slow down their process of filling their incoming class, but it would also hurt their image. No medical school wants to have to report that out of all the applicants they invited to enroll with them, only a tiny fraction actually took them up on the offer. So is yield protection a thing? At some schools, maybe. But is it as common as all the online forums of panicked applicants might have you believe? Probably not. After all, the admissions process is highly competitive and selective across the board. Top-ranked schools and schools near the middle of the order often accept students with similar stats and experiences, using more holistic factors like essays, interviews, and demonstrated fit to help them split hairs between acceptances and rejections. When applicants get rejected from schools where they expected to get in, they usually tend to draw the conclusion that hurts the least. They'd prefer to think, my application just must have been too strong, instead of maybe I should have presented my background differently, or probability plays a role in this process. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing the real answer. That's just how holistic admissions works. It's impossible to quantify the quality of your activity sections, secondaries, or interviews in the same way that GPA and MCAT scores can be quantified, but they're all essential pieces of the puzzle. And that puzzle is being put together by a team of human beings who all have their own values, preferences, and perspectives, even while representing an institution. So it's usually best not to try to outsmart or shortcut the system. Even if you end up getting a rejection or two because you're overqualified, the worst thing that can happen is you end up writing a few more secondary essays than you might have otherwise. And really, what's the difference between 3 dozen and 4 dozen secondary essays once you've created a template that you can adapt for each school? By the way, you can learn more about how to master the secondary essay writing process by checking out our secondary series here on YouTube. If your application is so impressive that you're in danger of AdComs rejecting you, then there's probably a good chance that you'll get into at least one of the higher ranked med schools you also applied to, as long as you applied in the first place. It's also important to note that med school rankings fluctuate from year to year, so you shouldn't base your likelihood of getting into a specific school on the exact ranking position it was assigned during your application year. It might be more helpful to look closely at the average stats of accepted students within recent years, but stats aren't everything either. You should also research the questions that come up in secondary essays and interviews at a school in order to get a sense for the kinds of experiences they value most, and then determine whether your own measure up. The bottom line is yield protection might exist, but there's no way of knowing whether your admissions outcome will be a result of yield protection. So don't let that keep you from applying to a medical school for which you feel exceptionally well qualified to apply. Choosing not to apply to a medical school because you think your application is too strong can become a self-fulfilling prophecy just as easily as if you didn't apply because you thought your application wasn't strong enough. You can't read AdCom's minds, and it's important to have more than one backup plan. So cast a wide net, apply to reach, target, and undershoot schools. Developing the right school list based on your profile is one of the most nuanced aspects of the admissions process, one that we develop on a custom basis for each of our students. And at the end of the day, whether you feel over or underqualified entering the admissions process, the best thing you can do to maximize your odds of success is to submit excellent essays. And there's no essay more important than your personal statement. To learn how to write a great one, visit our Personal Statement Premium Example Hub, where you can browse hundreds of sample essays that are categorized by topic, along with in-depth analyses for each. Best of luck.